At the Rubido family mansion, Lady Wenty confronts Art, her attendant. She is furious because she had asked him to slay a dragon, but he failed. Art kneels before her and apologizes for the delay. However, Lady Wenty couldn't care less about his excuse. She had wanted to eat dragon meat, but now she's no longer interested. Her father, Chief Lates, appears and asks what's going on. Lady Wenty says that Art failed his task again. Chief Lates becomes enraged and scolds Art, saying he had trusted him to take care of his daughter, but now he has let him down. Feeling despondent, Art begins to doubt himself, thinking he's useless and that his life has no meaning for failing to meet his master's expectations. Meanwhile, Chief Lates tries to console his daughter by promising to find a dragon for her. Art's vision begins to blur, and just as he is about to promise to take care of everything, he is suddenly overcome by exhaustion and collapses. When Art was a boy, the Rubido family took him in as a servant. At first, he and Wenty, the young lady of the house, got along very well. But over time, things began to change. Lady Wenty grew more short-tempered and demanding of Art. She made him do all the housework and even fight dangerous beasts. Eventually, he learned magic solely to meet her demands. Day by day, Art was slowly worn down, losing the ability to think and act for himself. It was a sad thought that everything would end simply because he was so tired. After the incident where Art collapsed, Chief Lates decided that Art's service had been sufficient and immediately cast him out, allowing him to take nothing with him. Art wandered aimlessly through a snow-covered forest with no idea what to do. He accidentally kicked a small stone sticking out of the snow, causing him to trip. His water flask opened, spilling onto the ground. Feeling helpless, Art decided to just lie down, as he no longer had the mental strength to continue his journey. He was filled with sadness, because all he ever wanted was to make Lady Wenty smile, but unfortunately for Art, a hungry wolf suddenly appeared and spotted him. Just as the wolf was about to pounce, Art quickly defended himself, slashing its face with his dagger and knocking it unconscious. As Art prepared to finish the wolf off with his dagger, he heard the yelps and growls of wolf cubs in the distance. In that moment, Art realized the mother wolf was only looking for food for her pups. Feeling a sense of empathy, he decided to spare its life. Afterward, Art hunted a wild boar and gathered some mushrooms, preparing dinner for himself. Early the next morning, he arrived at an adventurers' guild called Fearin. Upon arriving, he saw many dangerous quests posted on the request board. However, since he had been raised as a butler his whole life, Art thought a more suitable job for him was the laundry request from the Isfiel family. He told the guild receptionist he wanted to take that quest. But upon hearing Art's choice, the receptionist grew worried. The other guild members reacted with outrage, cursing and shouting for him to give up, since many others had attempted this quest before and all of them had failed. They explained that this laundry quest was unlike any other and that no one had ever managed to complete it. The conversation was interrupted when Isfiel, the Ice Princess, suddenly appeared at the guild bar. She wore heavy armor and carried a large bag over her right shoulder. Her sudden appearance took everyone by surprise. As she entered, the guild members were in awe of her majestic presence, finally confirming the rumors that she was both a noble and an adventurer. Isfiel placed the bag she was carrying on the reception desk and announced she was there to turn in some items, the very wild boars she had hunted. The receptionist expressed her gratitude for the difficult work and thanked her for bringing in the items. Then, the receptionist announced that someone had arrived to take the job for the Isfiel family. She glanced around but didn't immediately notice Art. It was only when the receptionist pointed him out that she finally saw him. She introduced herself as Isfiel Urk, the eldest daughter of the Isfiel family. Art introduced himself as well and promised to serve her diligently, doing his utmost to be of assistance. Just then, Art noticed the silence and the strange atmosphere around them. He realized he had just used the familiar phrasing of a butler. After staring at him for a moment, Isfiel said that washing out monster bloodstains is no easy task, and it could take a full day to clean just one set of clothes. She asked if he was still willing to try, and Art agreed. Curious, she asked him how long it would take to finish. He confidently replied that it would only take about an hour. Princess Isfeel was surprised and somewhat annoyed by his confidence. She sighed but decided to give him a chance. Isfeel led Art to the vast Isfeel family mansion. At the gate, she announced she was going to change and then instructed him to follow the family's head butler, Tet, to the back garden. Along the way, Tet and Art introduced themselves to each other. Tet explained that the Isfeel family was a noble clan with the title of Marquis. Interestingly, Lady Urk had become an adventurer to prove her worth, following family tradition. While Urk was bathing, Tet led Art to where all her dirty clothes were kept. There were so many they filled a large bathtub. Tet explained that monster blood would ruin the clothes after 3 days, and that it usually took 3 people a full day to clean just one set. However, Art reassured Tet that it wouldn't be a problem. Suddenly, Urk emerged from the bathroom wearing a beautiful dress and looking more feminine than before. She announced her presence. Her appearance made Art stare at her in astonishment. Urk asked if he was staring because he thought she still had blood on her face. Art awkwardly denied it, which made Urk laugh and call him a strange one. She wished him luck with the laundry. Art started immediately, pouring large buckets of water into the tub and soaking all the clothes together. Tet praised Art's technique, and the maids offered to help, but Art assured them he could handle it himself. Then, Art began to use a special kind of magic for the laundry. Urk was surprised and said she had never seen this type of magic before. Art explained it was magic he had created himself to handle all his daily chores. He called it his unique household magic. The clothes began to wash themselves and quickly became clean, ready to be dried. Tet and the maids were astonished. The clothes now looked brand new and sparkling white, with no trace of monster blood. They couldn't believe that something once covered in monster blood could become so clean, beautiful, and even have such a pleasant scent. Tet asked Art how he was able to complete the task so easily. Art responded by asking if they were familiar with slimes. He explained that slimes can absorb and digest anything they touch, and based on that principle, he created a digestion spell. Instead of using digestive fluids, he replaced them with cleaning agents to effectively clean. Tet was speechless, while the maids praised Art for cleverly using a monster's attribute for laundry. Urk also acknowledged Art's talent and apologized for doubting him. She expressed her amazement at how easily he handled a task that had always been a burden for her. Art politely suggested that she could come to him for advice in the future, as he had many useful ideas. Art was surprised by her courtesy, as he had only ever experienced harsh commands his entire life. He knelt and promised to obey her commands obediently. Urk noticed Art slipping back into his butler-like behavior. But Urk comforted him, saying she didn't fully understand the life he'd led. But she wanted to make it clear that what she was about to say was not a command but a request. Hearing that, Art was fascinated by the word request. He remembered all the times Wendy had given him orders, forcing him to obey without a choice. But with a request, he realized he had the power to decide for himself. Feeling pleased, Art smiled and told Urk that if it was a request, he would gladly fulfill it. In that moment, Art resolved that from now on, he would live by his own free will. The next morning, he woke up and found Urk sitting on his bed, wishing him a good morning. He panicked, shouting and wondering where he was. After a moment, he calmed down and wondered why he was in a bed, unable to remember what had happened. And then he made a silly assumption. Art nervously asked Urk if he was in her room. She asked him if he remembered anything, then explained that he had fainted after finishing the laundry the day before. She figured he must have been exhausted from doing so much at once. Embarrassed, Art covered his face with a pillow, unable to believe he had overexerted himself that much using magic. Urk asked how he was feeling, and he replied that he was much better, thanking her for her concern. She placed a hand on his forehead and told him not to lie, as he still looked pale. She said that Tet had prepared his reward. Suddenly, Tet brought in a chest full of gold jewelry. Art was surprised by the generous gift, and Urk explained that the Isfeel family could easily afford it. She then asked Art if he had any other plans, to which he replied that he didn't. Irk dressed him in fine clothes, and Art wondered if he should accept such luxurious attire. Irk reassured him that they were servants' clothes, as she intended to hire him to work for her. Art complimented her, saying she looked very beautiful, and thanked her, expressing his desire to serve her happily. She patted his head and told him to be less formal, since they were the same age. Art smiled and agreed. She suggested they go have dinner. On the way, Tet told Art the reason why Irk was called the Ice Princess. It was because many nobles looked down on commoners, and Irk couldn't stand being around people like that. She empathized with commoners and saw things from their perspective, making her a truly kind person. Art remarked that Irk had a wonderful heart. At the dining table, Art met Ramon Isfil, Irk's father and the master of the mansion. Art introduced himself and tried to apologize for fainting the day before, but Ramon reassured him that he already knew, and there was no need to worry. Irk noticed the dark circles under her father's eyes and suggested he see a doctor, but he refused, saying he just doesn't sleep well in the mansion's beds. Irk insisted that this had been going on for a while, but Ramon cut her off, saying that if his condition worsened, it was the will of the heavens. He admitted that he missed the royal family's beds because they were extremely comfortable, like sleeping on a cloud. Irk unexpectedly offered to make a similar bed, surprising both Ramon and Art. Art told Ramon that the materials for the bed would be slightly different from the royal beds, but crafting one was entirely possible. Tet and Irk whispered to each other, and Art asked if he had said something wrong. Tet then explained that only master craftsmen with decades of experience could make royal beds, and it took at least a year to complete one. Art confessed that his former master once asked him to make such a bed, but he thought it was impractical. Ramon offered to pay him 10,000 gold stones for a bed, shocking Art at the large sum they were willing to pay. Lord Ramon added that if Art could make the bed, it would be a remarkable feat thanks to his talent, and he would be rewarded handsomely. Irk added that this was a request, and she earnestly begged Art to help her father. This moved Art, as it had been a long time since anyone had depended on him. He agreed to help and said he would go get blackbird feathers. Irk warned that it could be dangerous, and she offered to go with him. In the Dorado forest, Art and Irk set a trap to catch at least one blackbird. They hid in a tree and waited. Irk reminded Art that blackbirds are powerful and hard to catch. She wondered if they were similar to the royal birds, remembering that blackbird feathers were excellent for making armor for adventurers. Art assured her that he could handle the situation just fine. Irk pointed out that the blackbird is a B-rank monster, of medium size and very difficult to defeat. She offered to help Art hunt it. As Art wondered why the blackbird hadn't appeared yet, they suddenly heard a loud roar from above. They both looked up and saw the blackbird diving rapidly towards them. Art told Irk to get down from the tree, assuring her that he would handle it. However, Irk charged towards the monster with her giant sword, trying to strike it, but the bird dodged her attack. In response, it flapped its wings and pushed her back. The monster opened its mouth, and a sizzling sound began to emanate from within. Art realized the bird was preparing to spit an acid attack, and warned Irk not to let it touch her. Without hesitation, Art threw his dagger, hitting the bird in the neck. He then used a spell called Paralyze, causing the bird to be instantly immobilized. After Art quickly drew his sword and unleashed a powerful slash, the blackbird was defeated instantly. Irk was amazed by Art's incredible swordsmanship. After the battle, she called out to him and he checked if she was okay. But Irk quickly ran over and asked about the sword technique he had used, saying she couldn't even see the blade touch the bird. Art replied that it was no big deal. He had just used a special type of magic called paralysis spell. Irk told Art that very few people could do that, which surprised Art as he had always thought the skill was common. The paralysis spell is an enchantment that activates when the user's item embeds in an enemy's body, then emits a strong electric current to paralyze the opponent, rendering them unable to move. Irk began to butcher the bird roughly, with blood splattering everywhere. Art saw this and asked if that was the reason she was often covered in blood. Urk told him not to tell anyone about this. When they returned home, Urk took a bath to clean up, then met Art in the garden. The bird feathers were placed in a round tub, and Urk expressed doubt about whether these hard, black, and dirty feathers could actually be used to make a bed. Art reassured her, telling her to trust him. Then he began to use his magic. Before long, the blackbird feathers turned a perfect white. Art explained that a blackbird's feathers are very white and soft when it is young, but over years of accumulated dirt, they become black and hard. Urk praised Art for his incredible knowledge. Art revealed that his old master once wanted to eat a large blackbird, so he had to study the species thoroughly. Tet commented that Art's appearance in their lives seemed like fate. Afterward, they brought the new bed to Ramon. He happily jumped onto it. And from his expression, it was clear he absolutely loved it. Soon after, Ramon fell into a deep sleep on the new bed. The maid saw this and cheerfully asked Art to make beds for them. Art smiled, as it had been a long time since he had made other people so happy. He promised to make a bed for each of them, and they cheered in excitement. Tet then asked Art if he had thought about what to do next, as powerful people might approach him to exploit his talents, but Art replied that all he wants is to see everyone's happy faces. Urk declared that she would protect Art's smile, making him blush. Art decided to head back to his bedroom, but Urk grabbed his hand and invited him out to the balcony. That evening, on the balcony, Art and Urk gazed at the beautiful, brightly shining moon together. Art shared with Urk that her father had been sleeping much better lately, and she praised him for this positive change. They both felt a little awkward being together, but Urk broke the ice by asking Art about his past. Art suddenly realized he had never told her about it. However, Urk reassured him not to worry and promised to support him, no matter what he revealed. Art smiled shyly and began to tell her about his time with the Rubido family. He explained that he had worked tirelessly to pay off his debt to them, but couldn't meet their expectations, which made him blame himself. Urk then told him that she liked him just the way he was, with no need to change. She also admitted that she didn't like the nickname Ice Princess at all. Urk also confessed that her family was always held in high regard among the nobility, despite only being marquises. However, she didn't care much about her family's status. All she wanted was to be friends with everyone. She recounted how, when she was little, she overheard the friend she always played with talking to her father one day. The girl's father told her to befriend Urk because their family, being only viscounts, didn't have much power and needed to connect with powerful families like Urk's to advance in society. Urk shared with Art that she had always felt her noble status was like a curse. She asked Art if he hated nobles, but he reassured her that he didn't. Although being cast out by the Rubido family was a great pain, seeing Urk and her father made him realize that there were still kind-hearted nobles. Urk laughed and remarked that that was a very Art-like way of thinking. Then, she became furious with the Rubido family for taking advantage of Art's kindness. Urk declared that she would never forget the name Roberto Wenti. The next day, Urk told Art she was heading to the Adventurers Guild. Art offered to go with her, but she advised him to rest since he had been working too hard. After saying their goodbyes, she left. Staying behind at the mansion, Art overheard the maids complaining about pests damaging the vegetables. He offered to help them find a solution using his laundry and blessing magic. He combined the scent of Ramon, which immediately drove all the pests away. The maids were overjoyed and thanked Art for his help. Suddenly, a handsome young man appeared, expressing his admiration for someone who could use blessing magic. The maids were surprised to see the handsome young man and called him Lord Frey. They were captivated by his charming looks. The head maid requested that he announce his visits in advance so they could prepare a proper meal. The other maids whispered about his beauty, but the head maid scolded them to get back to work. Lord Frey introduced himself to Art as Urk's older brother, and Art happily greeted him. Frey lightly patted Art's head, just as Urk had done a few days prior, and said he wasn't a fan of excessive formality. Frey then talked a lot about Urk and her concern for Art. Finally, Frey offered a handshake, but then immediately gripped Art's hand tightly and challenged him to a duel. Art was shocked and confused, noticing that Frey's hand was very cold. He stammered, asking why Frey wanted to fight him. But Frey questioned whether Art was truly strong, then told him to get ready. Art was completely bewildered by the sudden challenge, but Frey explained that he'd been traveling a lot, living like a nomad, and was now worried his skills had gotten rusty. So, what better way to retrain than by facing Art in a match, right? And what's more, Frey declared that if he beat Art, he would earn crucial big bro points, whatever that meant. But in the spirit of good sportsmanship, Art agreed. If this match will help you get stronger, I'm ready. So it was time to duel, and the stakes were as high as Art's curiosity about those big bro points. The duel began as Frey launched the first attack, which Art swiftly dodged. Frey was impressed, confirming what he already suspected. Art was truly strong. Internally, Art was panicking because Frey's slash felt as terrifying as being hit by a cannonball. It was a wake-up call that he needed to take this fight more seriously. Frey increased the speed of his attacks, but quickly realized that Art was stronger than he had anticipated. Not a single blow landed on Art, but Frey remained resilient, refusing to give up. He had to protect his honor as the heir to the Isfeel family. The worry was that if he appeared weak, other families might exert political pressure on his own. So, as the firstborn son of House Isfeel, Frey had to prove he was stronger than everyone else. He had a duty to protect his family and his people, and also to protect Urk. Frey decided to go all out, and Art insisted that he shouldn't hold back. Art wanted Frey to give it his all to push him to his limits, and Frey promised to do his best. From the window, Frey's father watched the duel outside and recognized the traces of Isfeel family magic. His son had returned without any notice. What Frey created outside was thanks to blessing magic, and he created a giant block of ice by using magic to lower the air temperature to its condensation point, turning water vapor into ice to form a weapon. Just as expected from the heir of House Isfeel, and Frey's father witnessed Art shatter that ice prison like a hero. Of course, Frey was very curious about how Art managed to escape such a desperate situation so spectacularly. But guess what? Art just smiled and said gently, "Oh, it was nothing special." Art spoke as if he pulls off these extraordinary feats every day. And here's the secret. He used a high-level spell called Friction, a thermal fragmentation spell, to heat his sword and melt the ice trap. It might sound simple, but it's really not. Art is too humble. It's magic on a completely different level. Frey is probably dying to learn that move right now. It's as if they're learning magic in some advanced magic school. It's worth noting that the magic ice was strong enough to shatter steel, but the heat from the magic could counter it. Frey's father, still watching, thought Art had performed very cleverly so far. Even Frey understood why Urk was interested in Art, because she usually couldn't stand her own brother. However, Art didn't want anyone to jump to conclusions. He had only just met Urk, but he wanted to be useful to her. And of course, he had his own agenda. Frey just wanted to be a super cool big brother, while Art wanted to pay off his debts. The atmosphere of the fight was heating up with every second, and tension filled the air. Frey was completely taken aback by Art's superior power. It was as if he had never met anyone with such incredible techniques. But wait, Art was still holding back his power. Frey couldn't believe it. "You're this strong and you're still not going all out?" It was insane. Frey was currently using about 70% of his power capacity, and he had a secret about to be revealed. The fight was about to enter its explosive phase. But wait, here's the biggest twist. Frey suddenly transformed into a giant wolf, and not the cute, ordinary kind. This was an ancient wolf from the time of the war between the gods and the Titans. This great wolf craved destruction and was an unstoppable force. Its power was so immense it could tear the earth asunder with its jaws alone. Imagine Frey wielding that wild and untamable power as he lunged toward Art, ready to unleash a hurricane of destruction. It was as if history was repeating itself, right in the middle of this epic battle. Who would have thought this fight would turn into a mythological roller coaster ride? Hold on tight, because this is definitely going to be a legendary match. It is also said that a true master is one who becomes one with their technique, with a single move and their entire being. They charge forward bravely and transcend the limits of human reason. The move Art performed was an ancient technique of creation, a skill he had discovered in the royal archives and had practiced carefully, constantly refining it. However, while performing this move, Art's sword broke once again. The battle was both mythical and dramatic, with skills beyond human comprehension. Art relentlessly gave it his all, but his sword couldn't withstand the pressure from the great technique he had painstakingly practiced. Art realized that he still had to improve his move. Now, a clear winner had emerged: Art. But Art's nature is not that of a leader, but that of a servant. He naturally began to make excuses, saying that without magic powers, he would have lost. Frey reassured Art, saying he thought Art was a good person. Internally, Frey was still analyzing the fight, realizing that Art had deliberately aimed for the blade instead of his body to avoid hurting him. A noble act. Just then, Tet arrived on the scene and greeted them both. It had been a long time since he'd seen Frey, and he asked if they were using training swords, as a royal knight would normally do. Art was surprised, while Frey caught the hint and decided to formally introduce himself. Frey stated that he was the first chairman of the Royal Magic Knight Academy and the vice captain of the Royal Knight Order, Isfil Frey, but he wanted to keep this a secret, known only to the king and the Isfil family. This gave Art a better understanding of Frey's status, and this duel was not just a simple sparring match, but a test of honor for them both. Meanwhile, at the Rubedo household, the selfish princess was causing a commotion as usual. She had a new servant, but no one could please her. Everything he did got on her nerves. Now, she was starting to miss Art and wondered where he was. She realized her father shouldn't have sent him away. Her father entered, taking the opportunity to announce that he wanted the new servant fired. This was already the 10th servant to be let go, and he asked if she truly found them all that terrible. The princess confirmed she did, and said she wished Art was still working for them. Her father admitted that no one could replace Art. Furthermore, the royal ball was in 3 days, and he also mentioned that Wenty's father would be delighted if she got married soon. She opened her wardrobe and looked at the beautiful dress Art had made for her, saying that the rest was up to him. Just then, Frey returned home and announced his presence, but Urk didn't come out to greet him. Instead, she went outside to meet Art, completely ignoring her brother's presence. In Art's mind, he found their relationship quite strange. Frey tried to act calm and asked Art about today's task. Urk replied that she had been gathering herbs to help an orphanage. Art felt sad that he couldn't contribute to this mission, and praised Urk for being wonderful and helpful, unlike himself. Urk immediately told him to stop talking nonsense, reminding him that he had been very helpful doing the laundry and building a bed for her father. This made Art remember, and his mood brightened a little. Frey watched their interaction and began to feel jealous. Urk gently told Art to take his time and that together, they would complete each task one by one. Frey couldn't take it anymore and challenged Art to another match. Art was surprised. Another match? Urk asked Frey if he had forced Art during the previous match, and Frey flatly denied it, saying that was not the case at all. He tried to de-escalate the situation, but Urk couldn't be calmed. She bluntly told her brother that she hated him. It was a critical blow to Frey's heart, causing him to collapse to the floor, lamenting that it was all over and that his world had crumbled. The father of Frey and Urk entered the scene and asked why there was such a commotion. It was time for a report, and Frey quickly told his father that Urk had said she hated him. Their father advised Frey to apologize for whatever might have caused that remark. But Frey didn't understand why his little sister hated him so much, and why he had to be the one to apologize. Their father, tired of this petty argument, changed the subject and asked why Frey had returned. There must have been a reason. Frey admitted he had a message to deliver concerning a special event. Art curiously asked what event, but Frey's father just said it was nothing important. However, he wanted to know how the preparations for the royal ball were going. The royal ball was a place for all the nobles to strengthen their relationships. Urk expressed that she had no interest in attending, but she wouldn't have a choice. The Duke had requested her presence. Frey said he would also be too busy to attend, and Tet added that he couldn't make it either. So, no one from the Isfeel family would be attending the ball, which was troublesome. If only there were someone trustworthy who could attend on their behalf, someone with the right demeanor, and someone Urk could truly rely on. Urk said that if that person was Art, she would go. Tet thought it was a brilliant idea. Art could be Urk's bodyguard and Frey's representative, a perfect candidate. Therefore, Tet formally asked Art if he could take on this duty. All Art cared about was being useful to Urk, so he agreed and willingly accepted the responsibility. Urk was very grateful. And so she needed a new dress. She went to get her measurements taken, and her maid remarked that she had grown taller again. Urk didn't like hearing that. Urk suddenly thought of Art. When the maid started talking about needing to increase the bust size of the dress, Urk blushed. When the maid asked if they should call Art to help, Urk refused immediately, saying there was no way that was happening. The maid tried to reassure her that they only needed to adjust the size, but Urk firmly ordered her to stop right there. In the next scene, it was time to address the event that Frey's and Urk's father had previously set aside. None other than the infamous eclipsing locust disaster. Frey felt a bit embarrassed for having brought it up at a completely inappropriate time. But hey, better late than never, right? You see, these terrifying creatures are no joke. The captain of the Royal Knights had revealed to Frey that this dreadful event would happen again this year. That's right, cue the ominous music. Picture this. Every few years, these horrific insects swarm by the millions, like a black wave of destruction, sweeping across the land, leaving villages trembling in fear and poor nations devastated. It's like super locusts, I'm telling you. They've already attacked the PAL region, and I'm guessing they won't stop there. But at least Frey was now in the loop, thanks to a helpful knight. Frey was so well informed, it was like he was the kingdom's real spokesperson, even more up-to-date than the royal Grand Chamberlain. Hopefully they can prepare well to face this locust plague, because it's definitely going to be a tough battle. We're all on the edge of our seats waiting to see how they'll deal with these winged invaders. The Lord of Paul was a longtime close friend of Frey's father. Frey's father asked him what he thought of Art. Frey remarked that Art was a kind and sincere kid, a genius who only comes around once every 1,000 years. Truly, Art's previous circumstances were incredibly harsh, and it was a stroke of luck that they found him. Take the bed Art made, for example. It's dangerously comfortable. This young man has helped them so much, and everyone has to admit how incredibly useful Art is. Frey's father offered to handle the locust problem himself. However, Tet was asked to report on Baron Rubido's family. Frey was surprised, not expecting the Rubidos to be under investigation. According to Tet, there was a dark rumor surrounding the Rubido family. A former employee had told him that the family had enormous financial resources from unclear sources, possibly from illegal business activities or other risky ventures. Meanwhile, Urk had put on a splendid dress to prepare for the ball, even though she didn't want to attend because she found the nobles too annoying. Art accompanied her in the carriage to the event, and he complimented her, saying she was beautiful. However, Urk didn't want to be flattered. Although she did admit the dress was a bit tight, Art refused to take back his compliment, insisting she looked magnificent. And he swore on his honor that he would protect her, no matter what happened. This was his decision, and from now on, he wouldn't let anyone control him anymore. Let's see how the fate of these two unfolds. Urk sprayed a perfume that cleansed and enhanced magic, and Art asked if it would help her calm down. When they arrived, Art offered to be her escort for the ball, and Urk happily agreed. As they entered the hall, everyone started to notice Urk's radiant beauty. Urk looked like an angel, And Art, though not overly conspicuous, had an admirably refined air about him. Irk quickly spotted someone she had hoped wouldn't show up. Art reassured her, telling her not to worry, because he was here by her side. As they walked through the splendid corridors, the lively sound of violins filled the air. Art called Irk's name and politely asked if he could have the honor of a dance with her. Someone suddenly recognized Art and ran up to hug him tightly. This caught Art completely by surprise, and he froze, politely asking the young lady to let him go. The girl was still incredibly excited to see Art, saying that they had finally met again. Just then, Art realized she was Princess Leah. As people started to gather to see what was happening, they wondered who this young man was and what his relationship with the princess was. Leah didn't hesitate to declare that Art was a wonderful person, the one who had saved her, Leah Drad, from a dragon's wrath. Art was her knight in shining armor, and she couldn't contain her excitement upon seeing him again, which is why she had hugged him. Irk politely reminded Leah that she was still there, though it seemed she'd been momentarily forgotten. Leah immediately acknowledged Irk and admitted that her excitement had made her overlook Irk's presence. Irk asked why Art had never told her about his encounter with Leah, and as Art began to apologize, Leah cut in, saying the most important thing was for them to find a quieter place to talk. While the party was underway, our attention shifts to Lady Wenty, who had just made a grand entrance with her father. But something was clearly off, as the place was noisier than usual. The commotion stemmed from the fact that Princess Leah herself had made a majestic appearance, completely stealing the spotlight. Lady Wenty, filled with pride, couldn't help but ask her father what he thought of the beautiful dress Art had made for her. To Wenty, it wasn't just a dress. It was a masterpiece that demanded attention. She was beaming with delight. But then, like a plot twist in a movie, Lady Wenty suddenly asked about her future fiancé. Her father said it was Freeman de Gaulle, which left Lady Wenty in disbelief. She exclaimed, "Wait, are you serious, father? This must be some kind of crazy joke." She couldn't imagine being paired with someone she considered an ugly pig. Her father tried to smooth things over and apologized on her behalf. He explained that Lady Wenty was just joking about the food, not the fiancé. Oops, how awkward. Still, her father didn't give up easily and told her to go meet Freeman in the kitchen. But after just one glance, Lady Wenty fled as fast as lightning, leaving her father to call after her, regretting his matchmaking choice. Meanwhile, Irk, Art, and Princess Leah had found a quieter place to talk. Irk asked how Leah and Art knew each other. Art began to explain that he had some business in the royal capital once. But Leah chimed in, saying Art looked so cool when he defeated the dragon. Irk felt a little disappointed, as she had hoped Art was only especially nice to her. But it turned out he was just kind to everyone. Leah asked if the gift she sent Art had been useful. This made Irk curious. And Leah revealed that she had sent Art a large number of gold bars from the royal treasury. Leah asked if Art had received the gift, but Art apologized, saying he didn't remember receiving anything like that. Leah said it was all right. She could arrange to send another one later. Then, Leah asked why Irk and Art had come to the party together, trying to hide the jealousy in her question. It turns out Princess Leah has a huge crush on Art, but he's completely oblivious. Indeed, love can make a person blind. And so, Leah proposed a new plan. She said to Art, "Hey, Art, why don't you visit my place after the party? I'd be delighted to have you." But Irk, having had enough of the nonsense, decided to draw the line and firmly said, "Absolutely not." Irk declared, "Art is my loyal butler. His duty is to serve me, and that's the end of it." And just like that, the two girls began to argue fiercely. But Princess Leah wouldn't give up so easily. She tried to argue that Art would be happier with her. However, Irk refused to back down. Hold on, that's for Art to decide, where he belongs. As the two ladies' argument unfolded, poor Lady Wenty was going through the worst nightmare of her life. She felt like screaming, "No, it can't be." She completely refused to be tied to a man she found utterly unattractive. She even exclaimed, I'd rather die than be stuck with him. Ouch, that was definitely a painful blow to him. But here's the twist of the century. Lady Wenty, deep down, secretly knew that everything would be better if Art were there. That's right, a moment of unexpected humor. Meanwhile, Urk and Princess Leia continue to fight over Art, each pulling on one of his arms, claiming ownership of the poor guy. In the midst of that tug of war, Lady Wenty suddenly spotted them. Oh dear, how will Art resolve this difficult situation? Just then, Lady Wenty recalled memories of when Art served her as a child. When those around her called her nasty names, Art was always there to comfort her. Even though she had angrily ordered him to react harshly to those people, Art chose to convince her that she wasn't what they called her. He told her she was a good person. However, Lady Wenty had been spoiled by the influence of those around her and her father's indulgence right up until this moment. When he stopped her from making a scene about her arranged marriage, she couldn't accept it and realized just how good Art had been to her. Wenty suddenly approached them, demanding that Art return to be her butler. Wenty, in a sarcastic tone, asked if Art had quit his job as her butler and ordered him to come home with her, as if nothing had ever changed. Art began to lose his composure and reverted to his old habits, where he couldn't defy her commands. Art's past conditioning left him feeling powerless against those orders. However, Urt quickly stood up for Art, insisting that he had the right to decide for himself and couldn't be forced to go back if he didn't want to. Urk tried to talk to Art, noticing that he was flustered, unable to speak or react naturally. Wenty quickly reverted to her rude nature and asked who Urk was, but upon realizing Urk was the Ice Princess, Wenty immediately apologized for her rudeness. Even so, she was still determined to drag Art back to serve her. Urk firmly objected. She couldn't let Art return to a life of oppression and injustice at the hands of the Rubito house. Wenty admitted that Art needed to decide for himself, but Urk was worried because she saw Art was unable to express his own opinion. Clearly torn between preserving his relationship with the Isfeel house and the fear of angering Wenty. Meanwhile, Princess Leia, observing the situation, understood Art's problem perfectly. She explained Art's psychology to Urk. This was like a hyoko chick, a baby bird that recognizes the first person it sees as its mother. Art had been raised in servitude to the Rubito house, and his mind was still controlled by Wenty's absolute commands, even after he had been fired. Urk was worried because she knew that if Art went back to Wenty, he would be abused again and have no voice for himself. Princess Leia also began to question why Art had never received the gift of gold she had sent after he rescued her. When Leia asked Wenty about this, Wenty pretended to know nothing. She even blamed her father. Afterwards, Wenty secretly ordered Art to lie about having received the gift, and Art, afraid of displeasing Wenty, did as he was told. Despite lying to keep the peace, Art felt crushed by the pressure from Wenty. A triumphant smile appeared on Wenty's face. As they were about to leave, Urk once again reminded Art that he had the right to decide his own life and shouldn't let himself be controlled. She reminded him of the good things he had done for the Isfeel family, like curing her father's insomnia by building him a royal bed. Art faced a difficult decision: return to a life of servitude under Wenty, or stand up for himself and continue on the path of freedom he had found with the Isfeel family. She reminded him that he had promised to always be by her side, but right now, she wanted to be by his. She asked Art to face her honestly, without lying. Those words struck a chord with Art, causing the instincts that made him want to return to Wenty's service to fade away. Art realized that if he left with Wenty, he would be hurting Urk and the Isfeel family, who had been so good to him. This changed Art's decision, as he didn't want to see Urk in pain. As Art thought about everything that was happening, Urk continued to tell him that it was okay not to be able to do everything on his own, and that she wanted to help him. Urk's words made Art realize that his entire life had revolved around following orders, with no freedom to make his own decisions. Before meeting Urk, Art only knew how to do what he was told and never had a will of his own. But Urk and the Isfeel family had taught him that he had the right to choose, and they never ordered him around, only asked for his help. At that moment, Art realized he had hurt Urk and the Isfeel family, and it made him feel disappointed in himself. He didn't want to be a terrible butler anymore. When Urk begged Art not to lie to her, he realized that going with Wenty would be a lie. He couldn't let that happen. Art decided to free himself from Wenty's control, and for the first time, exercise his own free will. He apologized to Princess Leia for lying to follow Wenty's orders, and confessed he knew nothing about the gift the princess had sent him, as he'd never been told about or seen it. Wenty, feeling her control slip away, couldn't believe Art was no longer obeying her commands. Art firmly confronted Wenty and stated the truth. He was no longer her butler because her father had fired him. Art confirmed that he was now the butler of Urk and the Isfeel family, and no longer served the house of Rubido. Wenty, in desperation, tried to deny reality and ordered Art to return to her service, but Urk quickly intervened. She warned that if Wenty tried to force Art to do her bidding, she would have to step in and protect him. Wenty realized there was nothing she could do to change the situation or get Art back. Finally, Princess Leia turned her attention back to another matter: the unjust use of the gift the kingdom had sent to Art. The princess informed Wenty and the Rubido clan that they would be punished right then and there. Everything happened so fast that Wenty hadn't even processed the fact she'd lost Art. But now she and her family were about to be punished by the kingdom. It was a fitting punishment for their cruel and unjust actions. As the princess declared the kingdom's punishment upon the house of Rubido, Wenty's father, Rubido, fled the kingdom, trying to escape his sentence. With him was the family he intended to marry Wenty off to. The kingdom immediately issued an order to find and capture them, as they couldn't have gotten far. Wenty, left with no other choice, followed her father's path and left the grand hall. But her eyes were filled with hatred, and she told Art to remember this moment. As she walked out of the hall, a part of the dress Art had made for her ripped. This incident turned her every step into a walk of shame. As the procession continued, Art and Urk were overjoyed to be reunited. Urk welcomed him back and vowed to always protect and help him. They stayed like that for a while, even forgetting the princess's presence. The princess had to joke that she did most of the work, and deserved some credit and affection too. The two women continued to argue over who deserved Art. But things were different now. Art declared that he was Urk's butler, so there wasn't much room for debate. Still, the princess didn't give up. While Urk called her actions a nuisance to Art, the argument, which should have ended quickly, dragged on until someone else entered. Urk's joy was interrupted when a messenger, who had been searching for the princess and Art, appeared. He seemed relieved to see them, as he had an important message to deliver. He whispered to Urk that a disaster was approaching. Art felt a sense of dread about what was happening and asked if Urk was all right. The messenger announced that a massive swarm of black batters was heading toward the kingdom. These creatures struck fear into all the residents, because they brought with them hunger, famine, and drought. Black batters were a species that destroyed crops and resources, even the precious materials the people cultivated. They spread terror across the city, and upon hearing that this disaster was approaching the kingdom, a sense of fear and gravity quickly washed over the princess and Lady Urk. The atmosphere, which had been filled with joy after Art was freed from his suffering, now turned heavy. What made the impending disaster even more terrifying was that the kingdom and its people had no certain way to stop it, and the devastating consequences it would bring. They could only try to manage what happened during the Black Batter's rampage. Ultimately, they would have to gather and formulate a plan by coming up with ideas to stop the swarm. This was the reason for the presence of the princess and the monster hunter, the Ice Lady, Lady Urk. Hopefully, as usual, Art would come up with a brilliant idea to save the kingdom, as his greatest motivation was seeing people happy. To deal with the coming disaster, the guild had to get involved. Urk introduced Art to the guildmaster, Mr. Peters, because she believed he would come up with a good solution, as always. Art didn't want to disappoint Urk, so he was determined to think of something useful. Mr. Peters began the meeting, And after the pleasantries were exchanged, he quickly got straight to the main point. They needed to defend against the black batters. Looking back at past events, this species had been introduced from an agricultural nation. These creatures ravaged relentlessly, destroying nations and lands, causing death, famine, and endless hunger. It was ironic that their own insatiable hunger caused the famine. Although these creatures were not new, some of their characteristics were already known. 20 years ago, their first wave of attack appeared, and their numbers were immense. They have tough shells, making them very difficult to exterminate and stop. Their relentless hunger helps sustain their species and allows them to grow in frightening numbers. Art was somewhat familiar with this creature because he had read about them in the royal capital's books. He knew that a swarm of black batters could contain anywhere from 100 million to 1 billion individuals. This was precisely why this wave was so terrifying to Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters announced that this time was different and that this could be the most devastating attack ever, as the numbers had increased far more than usual. This time, the wave consisted of about 500 billion black batters. When you multiply that number by the destructive capability of each one, everyone shivered with fear. The entire room was stunned, because many cities had already been destroyed, and it wouldn't be long before the swarm arrived. Cities like Onyx had become targets. Pearl and Garnet had been ravaged to the point where they held no significant value anymore. A member at the meeting asked if they had appeared yet. They referred to a special species, the pure queen batters. Dangerous creatures, different from the regular black batters. These white pure queens possess terrifying destructive power, enough to annihilate an entire nation. They were classified as an S-rank threat due to the level of danger and devastation they cause. The guildmaster confirmed that the pure queen batters have appeared and been sighted. The fact that these dangerous S-rank batters, along with countless black batters, were heading for the royal capital sowed fear and anxiety in the hearts of everyone present at the meeting. It's safe to say that the upcoming attack will cause the greatest devastation since the nation's founding. With time running short, Guildmaster Peters convened a meeting to brainstorm ideas to stop or slow down the swarm of black batters before they reached the city. He realized that if the insect swarm continued on its path, the royal capital of Drad would be attacked. They would arrive within a week, and that was all the time they had to prepare. Lady Urk, with her experience as an adventurer, knew that 1 week was not enough to gather a group of adventurers large enough from the guild to face that number of batters without being overwhelmed. Especially now that the pure queen batters had appeared, they faced a difficult situation with no idea what to do. In the midst of this, Art presented his plan, leaving everyone in eager anticipation. He proposed a solution that would buy them enough time to assemble a sufficiently powerful army. Since Art wasn't just any ordinary child, Guildmaster Peters had underestimated him, saying that this meeting was no place for a child to speak. Urk and her father, who knew of Art's extraordinary abilities and brilliant mind, spoke up in his defense, asking Mr. Peters to at least listen to what Art had to say, based on his outstanding past achievements. Art brought up the idea of lemonade, the kind he had once bought for a sore throat. He proposed turning the lemonade into an insect repellent by using insect-repelling magic. With this solution, they could hold off the swarm of black batters for about 2 days, enough time for the guild and the king to mobilize their forces. In a serious meeting like this, the idea was initially treated as a joke. And that was exactly how Mr. Peters reacted. However, Urk and her father once again spoke up to defend Art, praising him and expressing their confidence that he would successfully carry out this idea. Seeing the absolute trust Urk and Sir Ramon had in Art and his ideas made Guildmaster Peters pay attention to Art. With few options left, they agreed to Art's idea, as it was the only viable plan so far. Mr. Peters decided to give this genius a chance, then cautiously asked Art if he was sure he could pull it off. This doubt was understandable, as he had never seen Art perform magic or any other great feat before. Urk would not accept this attitude toward her butler, once again standing up to defend him. Mr. Peters apologized to Urk, explaining that he didn't know any other way to ask for Art's help. Urk's father decided he would send a message to the king, requesting the mobilization of the army to deal with the impending disaster. He left the rest to Art, trusting that he would execute the plan and save the kingdom. The princess, who was observing, noticed that the Isfil family treated Art like one of their own, a truly beautiful sight. As for Art, with great determination, he was ready to protect the Isfil family at all costs. After everything was decided, Guildmaster Peters dismissed the meeting and announced that they would all regroup at the guild in 2 days. That afternoon, Urk reflected on how Art always stood up for everyone, and how he had put all his strength and abilities into protecting her. She had also promised to help and protect Art, but she couldn't help but feel sad that she was always the one needing help. This truth made her a little sad, but also determined to stay by her butler's side, helping him through any difficulty he might face. Art began researching how to defeat the black batters. It would be difficult to find a way to deal with something you couldn't see, but luckily, Art happened to find 5 grasshoppers right in his own garden. The Ice Princess arrived very early to check on Art's progress. The room looked like it had been put to good use, with many research books scattered everywhere, not to mention the grasshoppers being used as test subjects. She wondered if Art had really stayed up all night researching. Art confirmed that he had, as the situation was too urgent. Urk was worried and begged Art not to overwork himself, offering to help him with anything he needed. Although Art acknowledged Urk's offer, he had decided not to make the Ice Princess worry any further. He simply thanked her and continued his relentless research. After re-examining the test subjects, Art realized that the insects were strongly attracted to wheat that had been poisoned with charm magic. This was a noteworthy point, but he still couldn't think of the perfect solution. As Art was pondering the results of his experiment, there was a knock at the door. This was rather strange, as Urk and Art weren't expecting anyone at this time. When Art opened the door, he saw Princess Leah standing there with a smile on her face. Art was surprised, while Urk just sighed. Knowing exactly why Princess Leah had come, the confrontation between Princess Leah and the Ice Princess was bound to be an interesting encounter. Princess Leah entered without waiting for Art to invite her in. As expected, she playfully greeted Urk, who was in no mood to respond. But Leah still announced to Art that they were here to help him. "Who's they?" Then Leah signaled for her guards to bring in a series of heavy gifts for Art. She asked him to accept them this time, since the previous gifts had failed to reach him. According to the royal princess, although the gifts this time were fewer than before, they were still worth up to 5 million, including gold and ancient books. Clearly, Princess Leah knew how to spoil someone, but it didn't stop there. She also brought the necessary ingredients for Art's research. Urk clearly thought Leah was overdoing it, and the Ice Princess didn't hesitate to show her feelings to Princess Leah. Princess Leah asserted that this gift package, if anything, was still not enough. Then she asked for Art's response to her proposal. Art and Urk were both taken aback, as they knew nothing about any proposal from the royal princess. Leah feigned disappointment, saying that Art had deceived her. But Art insisted that he had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. And then Princess Leah dropped a bombshell, revealing that Art had never answered her marriage proposal. What? Art was stunned, and Urk was furious. When did Princess Leah ever propose to Art? The princess explained that ever since the day Art saved her, she had felt the red string of fate pulling the two of them together, as if it were destined. This was quite the flattering declaration, and Art really didn't know what to say. Luckily, Urk immediately intervened, stopping Princess Leah in her tracks. Urk confronted Leah, asserting that Art was now a part of her family, and the royal princess shouldn't try to force him. However, Princess Leah calmly replied that Art wasn't Urk's property, so she couldn't decide for him. The atmosphere began to grow tense for reasons other than the black batters. Art quickly pleaded for them both to stop arguing. Princess Leah asked if Art disliked her, and the butler could only stammer, unsure of what to say in the situation. Princess Leia offered Art another gift to persuade him to side with her. She really did always use gifts. This time, it was an explosive magic book that allowed the user to trigger explosions in their surroundings. However, Art refused the gift, but Leia didn't give up, offering to help Art with whatever he needed. Seeing this, Art thought of something Princess Leia could help with. He pointed to the insects and asked both Leia and Urk to observe them while he went out. It wasn't what Leia had expected, but she still agreed to help with the attitude that she could do anything if she put her mind to it. Urk sighed again, as usual. Urk asked where Art was going, and the butler explained that he had a few things to do in the forest. Urk was uncomfortable letting Art go alone, especially with the Queen Batter out there, whose influence could make monsters more aggressive. She offered to go with him to protect him, or at least provide support. But Art insisted he was only going to find a few adventurers from the guild who could help in this situation. Deep down, Art didn't want to risk the Ice Princess getting hurt. Besides, Princess Leia was without her guards, and he couldn't leave her unprotected. Art asked Urk to stay and watch over the princess, and to observe the insects. Urk disliked that she was always the one who needed to be protected, and she didn't hide her annoyance that Art wouldn't let her come with him, but in the end she agreed to stay and do as he asked. At the same time, to make Princess Leia happy, Art whispered in her ear to watch over the Ice Princess, and that he would reward her later. Leia was ecstatic and immediately agreed to stay. With everything arranged, Art left the room and headed into the forest. Time passed, and Art still hadn't returned from the forest. Princess Leia and Urk tried to tolerate each other while observing the locusts. After a while, they fed the insects and realized the creatures would eat literally anything they saw. Urk started to worry about Art. She didn't know where he had gone or if he was okay. She also wondered if she was being selfish by keeping Art under her family's patronage. Did he have another purpose? Princess Leia interrupted Urk's train of thought, saying she felt like a lovely wife sending her brave husband off to battle. Urk wondered if Leia would ever stop with such thoughts. She thought irritably about how she would have to endure Princess Leia's annoying presence. Urk brought up the gold embezzlement incident, asking Leia if the culprits had been punished yet. Princess Leia confirmed that the culprits, specifically Art's former masters, would most likely be imprisoned. According to Princess Leia, such a crime would normally be met with execution, but she had decided to only imprison them, feeling the outcome would please Art more. Urk just wanted to make sure the criminals weren't evading punishment, and she asked if Art knew about the latest development. Leia said that Art didn't know yet, and noted Urk's eagerness to be the one to tell him. Leia then reminded Urk that every woman needs to have patience, and that it was more the gentleman's responsibility to impress. This made Urk feel that Leia was quite the preacher. Leia added that she learned this from her parents, so it must be the right way. But immediately, Princess Leia realized she had just accidentally given her rival valuable advice, so she decided to change the subject before she let anything else slip. Princess Leia took out some of the gold she had once given Art and teased the Ice Princess, asking how Urk would feel if she received some gold too. Urk grew suspicious, asking why Leia would want to give her gold. But before the conversation could go any further, both nobles were interrupted by a strange light in the room. The locusts were glowing. It seemed to be a result of their contact with the gold. They wondered if they had just discovered something important that could lead to victory against the swarm. Meanwhile, Wenti Ribeiro sat in confinement, awaiting the final decision on her father's punishment. Sitting alone on her bed, she couldn't stop thinking about her former servant, Art. Deep down, she had never really cared about the gold bars. But after Art rejected her for the first time, Wenti realized he no longer cared about her, a strange feeling she had never experienced before. Wenti Rubito's memory took her back to a time in her childhood when she was being bullied. Art had tried to comfort her, but Wenti only ordered him to punish her bullies. Growing up, she had always been cowardly, boastful, and unkind. Because of her cruelty, she always relied on Art's kindness, while he always treated her like family. Now Wenti regretted repaying Art's kindness with inhuman treatment. She burst into tears, begging for Art's forgiveness wherever he was. Lady Wenti heard a loud noise outside her room, so she peered through the door to see what was happening. It seemed the final verdict was being delivered for her father. Her father, Letese Rubedo, was accused of treason and arrested for smuggling forbidden goods. Even so, Letese Rubedo remained prideful, fully believing Princess Leah was behind the arrest. Lady Wenti Rubedo saw someone approaching her door and quickly ran back inside. A man knocked and asked if she was Lady Wenti. When she confirmed, the man said he was from the neighboring country of Barbarossa. According to him, Letese Rubedo had been smuggling beast folk and elves from his country, selling them as slaves. He also revealed that the Flamen family might be involved in this operation and asked Wenti if she knew anything about it. Wenti Rubedo knew the Flamen family, and the one she used to call the Flamen Dagger Pig was the very man her father had tried to marry her off to. She realized her father had probably intended to marry her off to forge a connection. Lady Wenti admitted that she knew a little about the matter. The man from Barbarossa said he needed to take Lady Wenti with him. As she walked away, Wenti silently wished, if only she had the chance to apologize to Art first. Meanwhile, Art was in the forest with a group of people. He seemed a bit distracted, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular. When asked about it, he insisted he was fine and quickly changed the subject. Art and his 3 companions were members of the Blue Sky Sword Party. Huey and Brad were the 2 men, and Thea was the woman of the group. Art complimented them, saying they seemed like a reliable bunch. Huey, who was rather arrogant, claimed that just one look at him should be enough to tell how reliable they were. It seemed that with the party's help, Art was able to scout the area around the royal capital and gather information. Mr. Peters had assigned the group to assist Art, and Huey asserted that he was the reason the party was helping. Art and his teammates had gathered intel on the increasing number of monsters appearing. As it stood, the Queen Bader's influence had increased monster appearances, and even D-rank monsters were becoming more aggressive, all due to the Queen Bader's ability to make regular monsters go berserk. Huey paid little attention to the group's information, confident they could defeat any monster that appeared before them. He was talking to them with his back to the forest, so he didn't understand why Art and the others were yelling at him to get out of the way. Huey looked up to see a giant bear charging at him at high speed. Its speed was beyond his expectations, leaving him no time to dodge. Art used quick steps, a type of wind magic, to swiftly pull Huey out of the bear's path just in time. Brad and Thea were stunned, as Art's movement had been too fast for them to follow. Art turned back to face the giant bear, but realized its reaction speed was just as fast. This monster used to be much slower, and this was definitely an effect of the Queen Bader. In the end, Art finished the giant bear with his quick draw technique, slicing off the monster's head with his knife. Afterward, he returned to the Blue Sky Sword Party and asked if everyone was all right. But before they could answer, they heard faint sounds from the distance. It sounded like singing. Art quickly went to investigate and confirmed his suspicions. It was the Black Batters. He left his new comrades behind and rushed back to the imperial capital. It seemed there had been a miscalculation. Instead of a week, the Black Batters would arrive in 3 days. As the day of the Black Batters' catastrophe drew near, keeping it a secret from the public became more difficult. The news spread like wildfire, and soon the newspapers began to report on it. According to the imperial capital's daily paper, the city of Turquoise had been destroyed, and those creatures were advancing rapidly on the capital. The paper also reported that many nobles had fled to distant places to escape the coming disaster. On the streets, people discussed the catastrophe, wondering what the king would do to handle it. Many people had the same thought: get out of the city as fast as possible. At the royal palace, Prime Minister Cyrilla read the newspaper with an annoyed expression. He couldn't believe that despite his efforts to keep it quiet, the news had finally gotten out. With the information now widespread, many citizens began to express their trust in the king and his government. However, Cyrilla angrily reprimanded Minister Anal for letting the information leak He ordered the minister to recall all copies of the newspaper immediately, and his anger didn't stop there. He also ordered the arrest of everyone working at the Daily News Company. Prime Minister Cirilla was in such a rage that he even ordered the hands and feet of the newspaper staff to be cut off. Before Minister Anal could leave, King Drad appeared and stopped him. The king had heard the entire conversation and disagreed with the prime minister's attitude. King Drad emphasized that a kingdom is nothing without its subjects, and that the common people should not be treated that way. Prime Minister Cirilla and Minister Anal tried to persuade the king to remain calm, as getting overly agitated would be bad for his illness. However, King Drad was determined to know the kingdom's situation in the face of the Black Batter's threat. He understood the people's fear, as they previously had no way to counter the attack. Minister Anal reported that 3,000 soldiers could currently be mobilized, but a third of them would be focused on protecting the palace. As for the royal commanders, only Royal Knight Commander Marcos was present. The other two commanders were away on missions. The king thoughtfully contemplated the greatest threat the Drad dynasty might face in the kingdom's 500-year history. Though weakened by his illness, King Drad promised to devote all his strength to saving the country and protecting its future. Just then, the king remembered his daughter and asked about the princess's whereabouts. Minister Anal worriedly recounted how Princess Leia had snuck out of the palace, taking the ancient golden books with her. King Drad wasn't surprised, as he was well aware of his daughter's stubborn nature. Meanwhile, Art had returned to the city and reunited with Urk and Princess Leia. They were observing a significant discovery from a distance. The first locust was glowing brilliantly. Princess Leia confessed that she had given the bug a bit of gold, and when it began to glow, they decided to give it more. Both Leia and Urk apologized to Art, worried that they might have unknowingly interrupted his research. But instead of being angry, Art was thrilled with the finding. He called it an incredible discovery and possibly the greatest breakthrough in human history. The Ice Princess, Urk, felt her heart melt, knowing that she had helped Art with something important, something she had always wanted, to be helpful to him. Urk was also overjoyed to see Art had returned safely, and she decided to show her concern. She recalled what Princess Leia had said while Art was away, that gentlemen are often attracted to women who know how to be caring and supportive. Urk, wanting to show the motherly instinct Princess Leia had mentioned, unexpectedly pulled Art's arm and surprised him by slapping him. Art was completely stunned, having no idea what was happening. When he asked why, Urk simply replied that it was because she was so happy after helping him. Meanwhile, Princess Leia sat quietly, crying softly to herself. She said she was just thinking about how she was finally able to help Art. She cleverly drew Art closer by gently brushing her hair, which left Urk frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Had Princess Leia just given her terrible advice and then done the complete opposite? Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Tet entered, but this time it wasn't for a friendly visit. He announced that the entire city of Firen was under attack by monsters. According to Tet, monsters had flooded the streets and were attacking the citizens. Wasting no time, Art immediately used his Quick Step spell and rushed outside, getting ahead of Urk and the others. When Art arrived, the scene was just as Tet had described. The city was in ruins and chaos. He quickly saved a citizen from the clutches of a giant bird by striking it with his sword. But that wasn't the end of it, as there were too many monsters. The presence of the Queen Batter had strengthened these creatures. In the midst of the chaos, Art saw a familiar face, Petas. He asked Petas what he was doing on the battlefield, but it wasn't the time for pleasantries. A giant monster dove down from above, straight for Petas, but luckily, someone stopped the attack by throwing a weapon at the monster with incredible skill. Art wasn't the one who did it, so he turned to look in the direction the weapon had been thrown from. It was Royal Knight Commander Marcos, the man everyone considered to be the strongest. It seemed there was still hope for this battle. The presence of the Royal Knight Commander was truly an intimidating sight. To Art, Marcos looked incredibly strong and powerful, his frame taller than even ordinary rooms. Art realized Marcos was his superior master. The city of Firin was being ravaged by locusts and monsters, and Pettis knew Marcos would be the one responsible for cleaning up this mess. The citizens had been evacuated from the city for their safety. The Royal Knight Commander mentioned that he had just dealt with an A-rank monster near the kingdom's capital. Art tried to introduce himself to the Royal Knight Commander, but Marcos was not friendly, coldly cutting Art off. He made it clear that Art and his comrades were not to interfere in his business, his eyes glowing with a furious green light. This was his territory, and he wanted to show that he was the one in control here. Marcos immediately ordered his soldiers to eliminate all surrounding monsters. While the soldiers took action, he stood still to chant a spell. Then he plunged his sword into the ground, causing a terrible earthquake that collapsed everything around them. His spell created a massive explosion, blowing the monsters to pieces. After the Royal Knight Commander's powerful strike, 2 large, desolate circles appeared on the ground. His power was so immense that Art and his companions had to brace themselves to avoid being swept away by its force. Art was stunned by the sheer destructive power of Royal Knight Commander Marcos, but also noted that he should have at least given a warning. Being near battlefields like this was incredibly dangerous and could be life-threatening. Art was lucky to have covered his eyes in time and told himself to stand firm in the whirlwind of this power display. The Royal Knight Commander apologized, explaining they were outnumbered and needed to strategically unbalance the enemy with the earthquake. Art realized that a normal earthquake would only shake an opponent, not blow them away like a bomb. The Knight Commander's soldiers were still fighting fiercely back in the capital. Meanwhile, a bear monster charged at one of the commander's soldiers. The scene was a chaotic blur of explosions and flashing lights, until a fist emerged from the thick cloud of dust. The Knight Commander once again proved why he was the leader. With one hand, he blocked the monster's attack, becoming a shield between the bear and the young knight. Then he grabbed the bear's snout and slammed it into the ground, a blow that created a deep crater. But the Knight Commander wasn't finished. With unwavering determination, he advanced on a new group of monsters, including giant crows, and began to radiate a brilliant energy. Preparing for another spectacular attack, he took his massive sword and sliced through the monsters, causing them to disintegrate into dust. Even so, the bear wasn't done yet. It charged forward with a new attack. The Knight Commander stood ready, facing the monster amidst explosions and flashes of light, continuing the fight. Art watched from a distance, in awe, unable to take his eyes off the display of power. To Art, out of everyone he had ever met. And the Knight Commander's strength was said to be unparalleled. Pettis also remarked that he knew the Knight Commander to be a ruthless and decisive warrior. In every battle, he wouldn't stop until not a single enemy remained. He was the reason the capital was protected from all threats and remained at peace. Ever since he joined the Royal Knights 15 years ago. Since then, there hasn't been a single invasion from any other nation. Witnessing the Knight Commander's determination, Art couldn't help but wish he could be half as cool as him. Art recalled the royal ball, seeing Urk's sad face as she begged him not to lie to her, even while overwhelmed with fear. He thought that if he were just half as cool as the Knight Commander, Urk would never have to cry like that. Back in the present, the monsters continued their relentless assault, but the Knight Commander stood firm against them. He ordered everyone to fall back so he could handle the situation. Just then, some of the commander's soldiers noticed he was bleeding, but the commander just waved them off, saying he was fine. Art remembered Urk's words of encouragement, and they gave him a surge of motivation. He wanted to be a protector, not someone useless. Art then performed a combination spell, Wash plus Enchant, creating the effects Oxidize, Elasticity, and Lightweight, which formed a chain of bubble prisons called Misty Jail to trap the monsters. The surrounding soldiers were astonished to see Art use magic so skillfully. They reasoned that his ability to cast spells repeatedly without tiring proved he was an expert in the field. Once the bubble prisons were complete, Art snapped his fingers and said, "Time to let them pop!" The monster-trapping bubbles vanished on Art's command, but using so much magic left him exhausted. Art collapsed, clutching his knees in pain. One of the soldiers rushed to his side, advising him not to overdo it, as a single spell would have been enough. In a situation like this, pushing himself too hard could lead to a mental collapse. The Royal Knight Commander finally introduced himself by his first name, Marcos. He acknowledged Art's magical skills, calling them impressive. This astonished his soldiers, as the commander rarely remembered anyone's name, let alone praised them. The soldiers grew curious about who Art really was, and Peta simply replied that Art was a genius. Commander Marcos went a step further by bowing to Art, expressing his profound gratitude. Art, flustered, humbly replied that it was nothing. But clearly it was a big deal to Commander Marcos, who deeply appreciated his help. Art, sensing the commander might still be upset about his lack of formal respect, quickly took the hint and bowed humbly, reintroducing himself as someone who worked for the Isfeel family. Just then, Tet ran in urgently, telling Art to come with him to the orphanage immediately. The situation involved Princess Urk. The scene shifts to Urk, who is cornered by wild beasts. She is fully armed and ready for battle. As the monsters charged, Urk didn't hesitate to swing her powerful sword, fighting to keep them from getting past her. She told herself she had to do whatever it took to ensure the safety of the nuns and children at the orphanage. The monsters could not get to them. While fighting, Urk thought of Art. They seemed to care deeply for each other. And the thought of him gave her strength. She pushed herself to fight harder, thinking about how Art was also risking his life in the city. She couldn't hold back. She had to do her part to support him from afar. Urk was determined to defeat the wolves and protect the orphanage. With everyone else busy fighting, she was on her own. She swung her sword powerfully, striking down the nearest black wolf, her determination clear. As she continued her assault, dust and smoke rose from the ground with loud bangs. Urk emerged from the dust cloud, panting and covered in dirt. She swung her sword again at a perceived movement, only to realize it was just a rock. It seemed the rock was thrown to distract her, as two other black wolves suddenly appeared from both sides, ready to pounce. Urk was cornered, with no time left to react, as the wolves' fangs closed in. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable pain. Blood splattered, and it seemed the worst had happened. But when Urk opened her eyes, she saw the wolves lying in a heap on the ground, their bodies electrocuted. Someone had saved her at the last second, and from the lingering smoke, a shoe emerged. As the smoke cleared, Urk saw Art. He let out a sigh of relief, expressing how glad he was that she was safe. Urk stood frozen, speechless, realizing she had been saved by Art yet again. She began to blame herself, feeling ashamed that she couldn't handle the situation on her own. Immediately, she apologized for being an inconvenience, for making him come help because she wasn't strong enough. Art quickly waved it off, saying none of that was necessary. He pointed out that she was injured and needed first aid right away. Despite this, Urk's spirits remained low. Tet ran over to her, expressing his relief that she was safe, but he also brought urgent news. There was an emergency at the guild. Art and Urk rushed over to see what was happening. They ran through the streets until they reached the building. At the scene, Art and Urk saw a badly wounded knight who tried to get past Art, politely asking him to clear the entrance. The knight was bandaged with blood seeping through the cloth. Art overheard the injured knight apologizing to the vice captain, who replied that he shouldn't be talking in his condition. Art thought for a moment, then offered the injured knight a bottle he had with him. The knight asked what was in it, and Art replied it was a homemade potion, hoping it might help. The knight then asked who Art was, and Art simply said he was just an ordinary butler who wanted to help. He then politely excused himself and left with Urk. As they moved on to more pressing matters, the guild hall was packed with people. Pettis cleared his throat and announced his presence, grabbing everyone's attention. He praised them for the good work they'd done and asked the crowd to listen to Art, who was standing beside him. Art thanked him for the opportunity to speak and introduced himself. He began by explaining that he had conducted his own investigation, which led him to realize the invasion speed of the black batters was faster than anticipated. According to his calculations, the city of Firen would be overrun in just 3 days. This news sent the crowd into a panic, as 3 days wasn't enough time to sort out their affairs or prepare for the disaster. And without a plan, they were like sitting ducks waiting for the catastrophe to strike. No one could control the chaotic crowd. Not even the king had enough soldiers to maintain order. Suddenly, Pettis slammed his hand against the wall behind Art, silencing the entire hall instantly. Furious, he reminded everyone that the current situation was dire, and it would be in their best interest to listen and not complain. Even Art was surprised by Pettis's action, but he managed to continue. Art explained that the black batters were approaching rapidly, and he had devised a way his magic could help. He planned to use enchanted lemon water, which would act as an insecticide to keep the insects at bay, at least at the front lines. However, the crowd remained skeptical about the plan's effectiveness, arguing it wouldn't completely solve the problem. Art went on to share that he had a supplementary plan. He placed a black batter on display for everyone to see, along with a type of magic ore. In an experiment, he discovered that when the black batters ate the mineral, their shells were affected. This was why the magic ore was so crucial. The black batters lack the proper organs to digest mana, and therefore they cannot tolerate magic-infused ore. Art said he was just following Pettis's advice. They could prevent a war from even starting, while also eliminating a large portion of the locusts by using the magic ore. For a moment, the crowd was silent, and Art felt discouraged, wondering if they would agree with his idea. Gradually, the crowd became receptive and began to praise Art for coming up with such a plan. They called him a genius, even hailing it as the greatest achievement in their kingdom's history. Humbly, Art explained that the plan was thanks to Urk and Princess Leah. They were the reason it was possible. Urk blushed at the unexpected compliment. Pettis concluded the speech, stressing that the decisive battle would take place in 3 days, and that everyone should prepare. He then told Urk that Art had always been her pillar of support, just by being by her side. He promised that no matter what happened in the battle, he would protect her. Trumpets sounded, and people gathered on both sides of the road as the royal knight commander and his army appeared in horse-drawn carriages. One of the royal knights handed a flower to a sad-looking woman, perhaps to comfort her. Then the commander led his army out of the city gates, ready for their mission. Urk and Art stood at the old Gestal combat fortress. Urk said that the time has come, and Art agreed that the great battle would begin tomorrow. Urk used this moment to apologize to Art, saying she never intended to pull him into the middle of this war. Art just laughed it off, telling her it was okay and that he only wanted to be helpful. Suddenly, the orphans and the nuns appeared, surprising Urk since they weren't supposed to be there. She had told them to take shelter in a safe place. However, they said they had come to give her a gift. When they presented it, Urk was confused at first, not knowing what it was. The children explained that it was a good luck charm, and that they had all pitched in to make it. The nuns explained that the kids wanted to do something for Urk as a symbol of their gratitude. They told her she could keep it, no matter what happened in the battle. Moved, Urk hugged the orphans and vowed that she would return after the battle. When she came back, she promised, they would all play and have fun together. Art stood at a distance, smiling as he watched her with the children. In the end, they had to leave, as the War Council meeting was about to begin. Urk urged the children to head back to the estate now that they were done. As the children left, Art remarked on how lovely they were. Urk said it was a miracle that the children still had something to be happy about during these difficult times. To Art's surprise, Urk explained that these children had lost their families in a disaster, and life had become even crueler for them as they were abused, kidnapped, and terrorized by monsters. She had taken on the responsibility of representing them and ensuring their financial security. Art reassured Urk that the children would always remember and be grateful for her kindness. Urk, in an emotional moment, praised Art in return, saying that he too was a savior she would always remember and be grateful for. The War Council meeting began. Commander Marcos, Pettis, Urk, and Art faced the council. A chart appeared, showing 500 billion black locusts advancing from the forest towards them, with the Locust Queen at the center. The Gestalt Fortress would be the last line of defense. The teams were divided into groups. Urk would head the reconnaissance team, Commander Marcos and Pettis would lead the diversion team, while Art would command the ambush squad. The rear guard protection team would defend the fortress. The plan would start with magical lemon water as the first strike, followed by a combination of flowers and magical ore to poison the locusts. As night fell, Art and Urk sat around a fire, keeping warm. Art noticed that everyone seemed to be in high spirits, and Urk explained that it was thanks to Pettis, because this could very well be their last day. Art remarked that Captain Frey seemed to be in a hurry, and Urk said he was likely heading west with the cavalry. Even Urk's father and Tet wouldn't back down from this fight. This made Art feel more at ease, knowing they had high-rank adventurers on their side. The Locust Queen had been targeted with the strongest poison, and Art called it an S-rank threat, incomparable to anything they had ever faced. He stood up and held out his hand to Urk, saying there was a place he wanted to show her. They walked into a crystal firefly breeding ground. These fireflies were drawn to crystals, and when they consumed the crystals, the stones would stick to their shells. As they strolled, Art noted that the crystal fireflies glowed like stars in the sky, and he asked Urk if she agreed it was a magnificent sight. Then he mentioned that Urk was on the rear guard, which meant they would be fighting in different locations, not side by side. Urk urged Art to speak his mind, and he admitted that he planned to confront the Locust Queen alone, determined to eliminate this threat. Urk asked if Art would really follow through with that plan despite the consequences, and Art affirmed he would, because she was the very reason he had to ensure the mission's success. As Art was about to leave, Urk grabbed his shirt, making him stop and turn back to her. She started to say something but couldn't find the right words. Art asked Urk if she remembered the day they walked on the balcony together. That was a day he could never forget, because it had made him so happy, especially when she said he was fine just the way he was. He expressed that she was the only one who truly accepted him for who he was, and his greatest wish was to always be by her side, through the good days and the bad. This was the first time Art had ever felt a sense of purpose, the first time he truly felt he had to protect someone. To him, a butler's duty is to serve his master, even if it costs him his life. As Urk began to cry, Art promised that he would come back, that he would return to her side when the time was right. As he left, Urk reflected on her feelings for Art, which were like a burning fire she had always kept locked inside her heart. As for Art, he too thought about his feelings. All he wanted was to bring Urk happiness, and he hoped that he could be the one to bring it to her, even if it was as her butler.